At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is a simple idea: difficulty is normal. We shouldn't panic or give up when we experience it. We feel pain because of the gap between who we are at the moment and the person we could ideally be. It's because we can't master the ingredients of happiness straight away that we suffer as much as we do. But Nietzsche didn't think it was enough just to suffer. If hardship was all it took in order to be fulfilled, then all of us would be happy. The challenge is to learn to respond well to suffering, perhaps to use it to create something beautiful. Nietzsche had some good suggestions. Friedrich Nietzsche was one of the few philosophers to speak of the virtues of hardship and failure. He thought that we could all potentially benefit from them. Paul Brown ran a drinks distribution company outside Manchester, which went bankrupt last year. He's now back in business, but the experience of failure changed his life for the better.
As a person, do you think as you come in here every morning, do you think you're slightly different because you've had this experience?
Yeah, I'm in earlier for a start.
Yeah.
But no, I don't let the little problems, I don't let them get on top of me.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little problem. You know, it'll go away. You don't take it into it's like massive, you know, like it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know, the end of the world happened, you know, a couple of months ago, and it failed, and suddenly there's a new world. So, well, it hasn't ended at all. So you don't think a problem is the end of the world, you know.
So in a way, you don't panic as much because you think, well, I've been through the worst has happened,
yeah,
and I came through it.
Yeah,
yeah.
You do, because you know it's not as bad. It really isn't as bad, you know, as what everyone makes out. You know, yeah. Failing is horrible. I wouldn't like anyone to fail, but have the experience of failing, have the feeling of the experience of failing at least, you know, because that's horrible. But try not to fail, you know. But everyone fails, I suppose. Yeah. So.
And yet, I don't know. I mean, I think it's something interesting that Nietzsche says is that we slightly live in a culture where failure is not spoken of. It's like there are these failures and sort of that's just this freakish thing that happens to a few people and let's not talk about them. And then there's success. But somehow the two are not brought together. And I think what's quite interesting is to think in every life, even a good life, even a successful life, it's going to involve some failure at some level. Not necessarily a huge level, but at some level.
Well, how would you be able to judge your success if you haven't failed? Yeah?
Paul's experience in many ways confirms Nietzsche's analysis of the benefits of failure. However, Nietzsche's point is more subtle. He didn't think that having failed was in itself enough. All lives have failures in them. What makes some lives fulfilled as well is the manner in which failure has been met. It's a surprising fact about Nietzsche that for a time he wished to abandon the bookish life in favour of becoming a full-time gardener. The plan never really came off, but cultivating plants taught him an important lesson.
Nietzsche thought that we should look at many of our problems like gardeners. Now, gardeners come across a lot of plants with very ugly roots. If we take this one, I think it's a particular monster. Look at that, fairly ugly. But what gardeners are able to do is to cultivate something that looks initially very ugly into something very beautiful. Look at this, rather stunning. And Nietzsche thought this was a kind of metaphor for what we should do in our own lives. That is, take situations that look initially very horrible, very dark, and grow out of them something beautiful.
There's something very uplifting about Nietzsche's botanical view of our problems. Even our most negative, ugly, dark feelings can be cultivated to produce something fruitful, but it's entirely up to us to make this happen. Envy, for example, might just lead to bitterness, but could, if properly trained, spur us on to compete with a rival and produce something wonderful. Anxiety might make us panic, or it might blossom into an accurate analysis of what's wrong, and so to peace of mind. And that's why Nietzsche wished misfortune on his friends, because he believed that hardship was a necessary evil out of which, if these friends were skilled, they might be able to harvest beautiful things.
Would you ever wish failure on your friends?
No. The feeling of failure, yeah.
Feeling of failure?
The feeling of failure.
Why?
Because the feeling of failure is horrible, and the feeling of making it again afterwards, just it puts it into context on how bad it feels to fail. You know, so the feeling afterwards is so much better.
Have you ever been to Naples?
No.
No. Okay, well, Nietzsche went to Naples, and Nietzsche says, in order to get great happiness from life, in order to harvest great happiness, You've got to live dangerously, he says, and he advises you to build your homes on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, which is a slightly reckless thing to do. Reckless, but it's a beautiful view. You see the sea, you get a wonderful view, and that's kind of his, his idea that life's a risky business, and no pain, no gain.
True, yeah. You've got to take a chance at some point, I think. Because if you don't take a chance, then how will you ever know? I mean, the views could be absolutely fantastic, but if you say to yourself, if it erupts, the problem's a landslide, well, you'll never know if the views are that good. And the views could, make up for that risk, that danger.
If Nietzsche gave some thought to what some good responses to problems might be, he also castigated what were, in his view, the disastrous ones. One of the worst was to head for the pub.
One of the most striking facts about Nietzsche is that he hated drinking alcohol. And this was more than just a personal taste. He believed that anyone with even the slightest interest in being happy should never go anywhere near a drop of alcohol. As he put it, all the more spiritual natures should abstain from alcohol completely. Water always suffices. Water, the Nietzschean drink.
To imagine there is benefit in escaping our troubles once in a while with an alcoholic drink or two is to misunderstand completely the Nietzschean analysis of the relationship between happiness and pain. Happiness does not come from escaping troubles, it comes from cultivating them, from turning them to your advantage. The last thing Nietzsche thought we should do with our sorrows is drown them. Our worries are vital clues, telling us what's wrong with our lives and pointing the way to our ultimate improvement. Nietzsche was born in the tiny village of Röcken in what used to be East Germany. His father was the parson, his deeply devout mother was herself the daughter of a parson. The philosopher adored his father, and must have been deeply shocked when he died suddenly when Nietzsche was only 4 years old. The loss was to haunt him throughout his life. One of his first actions when he finally earned a little money, after winning a court case against a publisher, was to buy a large headstone which now covers his father's grave. And on it Nietzsche had inscribed a quotation from the New Testament. Die Liebe höret nimmer auf. Love never ceases. A traditional Christian message.
Even though Nietzsche loved his father deeply, even though he's buried in a Christian graveyard right next to his father, the pastor, Nietzsche had the greatest